Hi, thanks for joining us in the Bringing Industry Careers to Life webinar. Great to have everybody here today. Today is going to be a bit like Alice in Wonderland. We're going to go down a rabbit hole and we're going to look at what careers you will find on the other side of that rabbit hole. And I suppose very similar to how Alice is often going down this rabbit hole, it can be quite daunting, nerve-wracking. You might think, if I go to the red and yellow school, or if I go into advertising, what careers can I have? But fear not. I've been joined today by captains and navigators of industry, and they're all going to take a chance to share some of the wisdom that they've experienced through their careers. Nick is going to tell us a bit about what he's doing today, and maybe what he did in the last job before he did the one he's currently doing.
Thank you very much. I'm Nick van der Berg. I'm the CMO for an Australian-listed business called Emerge Gaming. We're in the gaming space, social gaming space, and prior to that I was actually, believe it or not, financial services and previously advertising. So yeah, I had quite a varied career path over the last few years.
Thanks. And now we'll go to Carmen.
I'm Carmen. I'm the head of full-time education at Red and Yellow, which means I manage the full-time accredited courses and our amazing lecturing team. And a long time ago, before I was in education, I was a graphic designer, and I would never have thought I'd end up being an education manager, but here I am.
Fantastic, Carmen. Thanks very much. Jamie.
I'm the MD of PhD, which is a strategic media planning company. And I come from a strategic background, so I've actually been a PhD for 12 years. I was a strategist before that, and funnily enough, I've always known that I wanted to go into media and advertising.
Great. And then we're going over to Nick.
Graham,
sorry.
We swapped names twice.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, I'm Graham Denise. I'm the Group Strategy Director for Cara, also a strategic media agency. Funny enough, Jamie and I actually are colleagues and competitors at the same time. Before I was with Cara, I was actually within the magazine publishing world, and I was at Condé Nast Independent Magazines, working across GQ, Glamour, and House and Garden.
And last but by no means least, Sue-Ann.
Hi, I'm Sue-Ann Barnhorst. I work at Deloitte, and I am in marketing. I am a marketing lead for Deloitte Consulting Africa, specifically focusing on cloud and core business operations, as well as enterprise technology and performance, which is just very fancy words for technology and core business operations. But before that, I was in pursuits, so focusing on a bit more sales, and prior to that, I was in human capital, focusing on talent advisory at our clients.
Fantastic. So allow me to introduce myself. I'm Andre Mahoney. I'm the managing director of a company called Sequalo Foods. We make Rama, Stork, and Flora margarine. So you will have seen those products. And I've been in this industry for a while. And before that, I was actually marketing in retail. So I was a Pep Store's marketing director. But let's get on to cracking, onto the new topic. The very first time you studied, what you studied, has that prepared you for the career you're currently doing?
I would say 100% yes. I studied in IMM, so I'd say it gave me a really, really strong base, or a powerful base with, just to understand the general arena of marketing. So it's obviously more of a business marketing side of things, and had media, and it had statistics, etc., but I think it's given me a really solid base. So what I'm doing now is an iteration of that as I've moved forward. But I would say 100% it prepared me for what I've done now here.
Great. Jamie?
Yeah, similar to Graham, 100% yes. I studied a degree in marketing communications. But I think one of the things that's quite interesting, obviously, when I studied, there wasn't even such a thing as digital marketing. So things have evolved quite a bit. I don't mean to give away my age, but I think that the important thing is really just kind of fostering this idea of continuing to learn and continuing to upskill yourself. I actually did the digital marketing qualification through Red and Yellow through their online learning. Which has obviously stood me in good stead in terms of being able to, move into the more digital landscape. So I think, now more than ever, people are going to have to study things on the fly and keep learning as they go. So I think, what we study in the beginning is great, but it doesn't by any means kind of pigeonhole you into what you've kind of started to think that you were going to do.
And Sue-Ann?
So I actually studied psychology, which is interesting because it definitely did prepare me for where I'm at today. Ironically enough, I studied at university, the University of Pretoria, and then I just started my career. And as I grew in my career, I got this passion for marketing, and I then furthered my studies, just like both of you said. It's important to continue studying and continue staying on top of things, and then just gravitating towards whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Nick, may I ask you this question? Did you ever think you would be in the career you are now from the first time you started working?
I think absolutely, because I've always had this passion for the advertising side. I can remember, I don't know if it was Ogilvy, whoever came to our school way back in the day when I was in grade 10, giving my age away there. And, something sparked in me that very second that they were there. And it has led me to be very fortunate and, to get to where I am today. And it certainly was all those years back then. It was like there was this kind of spark around being creative or being passionate about marketing. So I would say, I firmly believe that, yeah.
So Carmen, you're a lecturer.
Yes.
I'm sure when you started out, you thought, I hated lecturing or I hated lectures. But today you're the lecturer. Give us an insight as to how you've ended up being a lecturer.
It was never on purpose. The honest truth was that I resigned my job as a graphic designer, and I was like, I'm going to start my own little agency, and in the meantime, I need to get some cash in, and I'm going to do some part-time lecturing on the side. And I got asked, and I absolutely just fell in love with it. And it was unexpected, and I just loved working with young people. And then I completely forgot about starting my business. But I think it's also like my mom was a teacher, and I never wanted to end up doing what my mom was doing because it was so uncool, and I wanted that glamour of advertising. But at Red and Yellow, I have it both. I have the glamour of advertising and beautifully dressed young people, and I'm a teacher, like my mom always wanted me to be. So there you go.
That is fantastic. In fact, when I started studying, I studied industrial psychology, planning to be a HR manager. And I went to this company, they said, no, we're going to put you in marketing. I said, I don't even know what marketing is. What is this creative advertising? I don't know what that is. Well, 25 years later, I've never left that career. So sometimes you start enjoying or loving something that other people didn't even know. Okay. So when you think about marketing, you think about advertising, you think about making a good ad. But surely there must be something more than making a good ad. Graham, give us an idea about how you go about the advertising process.
Well, I suppose it's a very pertinent question, actually, something I'm very passionate about because, I look at Jamie on this one because we don't necessarily make the ads, right? But I come from a marketing background, and marketing isn't just about making ads. And I think it's actually potentially something that a lot of people who get into advertising do think, or get into marketing. They feel marketing's all about promotion, it's all about communications. But people forget that there's product, price, place, promotion, and there's so many different fields within marketing you can go into and get qualified in and study and be a part of and even specialize in. So I would say from my point of view, the thing I'm the most passionate about is getting the mix right. The TVC or the ad that we create, I have been a part of creating ads, sorry, I say I haven't ever done it, but I would say that it's understanding where the TVC or ad fits into the broader communication mix of what you're trying to land from a business point of view with clients, with consumers. I'd say for me, that's the highlight for me, and that's the passion I have behind sitting what I do in the marketing sphere.
So if I hear you correctly, it's not just about creating a piece of communication. It's how you place that communication, and who better to speak to than somebody in media. So let's talk about, you've got this piece of ad, you've got something, or you've got a piece of communication, or an idea. How do you go about deciding where you're going to place it?
It's obviously quite an extensive process, and we're quite fortunate in media that we've got, a lot of research and a number of tools at our disposal. So we kind of start with a bit of an exploratory sort of exercise, trying to understand the target market, where can we find them, what are the kind of nuances, and obviously also looking at what competitors are doing and seeing how we can kind of do things differently. And I mean, now we're in the age of data, you know, so it's just so amazing what we can actually pull out, the insights that we can derive from, you know, a variety of different sources. So, you know, I guess now more than ever, we've got the opportunity to really make sure that we land the right message in front of the right consumers. I mean, things like algorithmic creative and those sorts of things are what's, you know, so exciting, because, you know, you can see a different ad to you and to you, and we can really make sure that what we're getting, the message in front of people, is what is going to sell the product.
Yeah, and actually, you mentioned product and you've mentioned product now, and what's so fascinating by just watching and learning from our students is that, I mean, advertising sells and markets a product or a service, right? Is that so many of our students are actually starting to engage with the product side. So, you know, we have a student that graduated with an illustration degree last year, and she's just started her own business making sustainable kind of bath products.
Oh.
And you're like, well, how did illustration, that sustainability was just something that she was passionate about all along. So it's almost like, you know, we will market something, but first we will actually create what we want to market and advertise. And I think that's fascinating. I love my students for that kind of way of thinking.
I find that sometimes we also forget that we're actually the target audience. So in a lot of instances, it's like you have this great idea and you actually then have to check yourself in the mirror and you go, would I buy that? Would I, you know, succumb to that type of advertising? So it's also having the ability to be able to like step back sometimes and go, okay, well, the great idea, how does it carry through, to your point, like how does it carry through to all the other media channels that are available, and does it actually work within that environment?
Yeah. The one thing that's quite clear is that it's not always easy to get a piece of creative right.
Yeah.
The big idea sometimes is incorrect. I remember making an ad once. It was about 98, 99. I made this great ad, great idea. It's about being calm under pressure. We made it like this war situation, and it was great. That was done in June, and in July the Iraqi war broke out, and nobody wanted to see war on TV. So we spent about R1 million back in the 90s. That was a lot of money. Canned the ad. I had to go explain that. So yes, we don't always get it right. But Sue-Ann, the digital landscape has changed marketing. Back when I was a young graduate in marketing, we were putting money on TV and radio. But give us an idea of how the digital landscape has shifted budgets and how people need to come more familiar with the new world. I mean, we're sitting ourselves on Instagram TV right now.
Yeah.
And so the world has changed. Give us some idea as to how we cope and deal with these changes.
It's interesting. I think we're all on this journey together. We're all learning as we go along. And like Jamie also mentioned earlier, data is in everything, and there's so much power in data. The one thing that we as marketers need to remember and keep in the back of our minds is that we are human. And that's the one thing robots can't take away from us. And that's what digital can't take away from us. So just remembering that we have intuition, we have empathy, and we should keep on keeping that sort of human element in our communications and everything that we do. So, however, so what you were saying about digital is also we should absolutely just leverage digital instead of seeing it as something that will replace our jobs. So we should see it as, how can this enable me to be a better marketer or be a better in whatever you do? So I think, that's something that's just so important in that.
I've got something on that as well, just hearing what you explained at the start. Well explained, by the way. I like that. Because I'm such a firm believer in that, and so many people will come into, digital's changed everything. Yes. And the truth is it hasn't. So I'll just qualify that statement. So humans are still human, right? Yeah. And we still, someone once said to me, we still laugh, we still love, we still go outside, we still make purchases, right? So consumer journey hasn't necessarily changed. Become aware, become interested, you desire, maybe you take action. It's just how we've done it's changed. And that's what digital has done to us. So what digital has done is opened up this plethora of options we now had to be able to do the same journey type thinking, cognitive thinking we've been doing for ages from before. So if I have a need and a desire for something, the way I then go and get it is now different. but need and desire still exists as a human being. So for me, I think the fundamentals of marketing are still so important. And I think people perhaps misfire a little bit on the difference between strategy and tactics. And I think a lot of digital can be quite tactically led. And then if you take a step back and you look at what's the strategy and the human understanding and the empathy that sits behind this decision, that's how you deploy those digital tactics. And I think that's what's really important for me, is that we all need to understand that digital is a vital part of what we do, but it's not everything right now. It's one part of a massive world that's out there. And don't forget that humans, believe it or not, we're creatures of habit. We're not that different to how we were a few years ago.
But I mean, haven't we also always put like digital in this big bucket? And it's certainly not. I mean, back in the day when you're doing the TVC, you know, you're doing the best you could within that environment. And I think that we sometimes forget that. We go like, oh no, just put it into digital and it'll just work. And it doesn't really do that, you know. It's like, why doesn't that work? Well, actually you didn't think it through enough.
Or it didn't sit in the right place.
It's in the right place in the journey.
Well, I think there's a difference between getting 1 or 2 hits on Instagram versus getting 10,000 hits.
Yeah, sure.
You know, you can put a piece of communication out there, it's not the same.
Yeah.
But Carmen, talk to us about what graduates need to do to get into their preferred industry.
I think from experience of working, and we have workplace learning at Red and Yellow, which means in all our courses, students actually have to spend 3 days like finding their workplace learning. So the very first thing is like actually figure out what it is you want to do. And that's actually the hardest, to do that soul searching and like look at yourself and be, okay, I'm interested in this in the moment, and it doesn't have to be a big decision. And I think sometimes people get freaked out because they literally think, I'm making a decision for my 3-week workplace learning that is going to be my life for the next 50 years, and it's too much. But just think about what it is I want to do next year, and start that and do the research. Because I always joke with my students, they come to me and they're like, where do you see me? Like, I see you right in front of me. Where do you see you?
Yeah, excellent. I think it can be quite daunting when you got a piece of paper because you finish a degree or a course and you think, what do I do with it? But I think you're right. You know, I mean, we Google everything else. We might as well try to Google our careers.
Yeah, and follow people that you're interested in, like get on Instagram. So many students have gotten cool workplace learning positions because they had that engagement with someone that they felt interested in, the work that they liked of that person. I'm a huge fan of job shadowing. Like if you can't decide between careers for next year, go and job shadow each one of you and see what it is that you do in your life. It's like, you know, it takes a bit of effort, but it's worth the investment.
Fantastic. So Suen, you know, many of us would have either worked on the client side, in the corporate side, on the advertising side, but maybe sometimes a career takes a bit of a change, or it takes a bit of an angle. Maybe give us some idea about how your career has changed and how you've ended up where you are today.
I started my career thinking I'm going to be a human capital professional. I want to work with people. That is what I want to do. I want to make sure that you can optimally function in your career. And that was where I started my career. And then it was like a seed just started growing in me for creativity, for energy, the whole looking at sales and then looking at different target markets and things like that. So I started moving into a direction of pursuits and starting to understand what people do, what other jobs are out there. And I'm privileged enough to be in a global firm that has multiple opportunities, and I had the opportunity to move around a bit. And as I joined the pursuits team, I started seeing what our marketing team started doing. And where our marketing team started growing was to do strategic marketing. So not just focusing on marketing sort of that's out there, just advertising or this and that, and speaking to what we discussed earlier, but absolutely focusing on, but what does the business need? And then that whole element of behavioral psychology sort of also took flight, and it just made sense to me to join this team to understand our audience and then go into marketing.
Lovely, that's a great story. So Nick, we were chatting earlier about how your career has gone from retail into gaming.
Yes,
so maybe you can give students a view as to how you can selling products to creating
Yeah, look, I
content.
mean, we had this business called Thunder.com back in the day, and we had just come out of varsity, and we thought we had this great idea to take photographs in nightclubs and venues, to be honest, and one was hooked then. And, I think there was always a little bit of an entrepreneur in myself, so that was kind of why my career has been quite varied, in that it had come from wanting to start one's business, and in some instances we spoke about failure earlier.
Yeah.
Some of the failures were spectacular, and being able to pick oneself up and then carry on. And but it's always had a central theme. It's always had a theme around creativity or marketing or communication, etc., which is what I've really enjoyed. So whether it's been on the retail side, there's always been overspill into how do we sell this product, how do we talk to a consumer, versus then, well, how do we create a good ad? And where I am now, I really kind of almost feel that I've spent 20 years getting to this point, and I couldn't be happier. So I'm very grateful.
So one of the things that I've done, I've worked in marketing almost all my career, and I've done products from toilet cleaners to butter, and now I do margarine. And many people say, we just better butter or margarine. 4 years ago when I was in butter was
You
better.
believe.
Now that I'm a margarine is better. So
Amazing.
sometimes you have to get passionate about the job you're doing, the career you're doing, the company you're working for.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as you guys mentioned, you're in competitive industries, but that's okay. But Jamie, let me ask you this question. What do you think makes for success, or how can somebody become successful in your industry?
I touched on it earlier, but I think kind of always striving to better yourself and learn something new, kind of never just being satisfied with the status quo. I mean, I think these days so many people are scared that automation and robots and things like that are going to take over, and jobs are going to become obsolete. I mean, people kind of speak about the fact that most of the jobs around in sort of like 20 years time don't even exist today. So there's no way that we will continue to stay relevant and continue to stay successful if we're not constantly learning new skills and almost kind of pivoting whenever the market requires us to, so that we can kind of stay ahead of that curve. So for me, it's fostering that idea of you're never comfortable. You're always looking for the next thing to study or looking for the next way to kind of grow what your skill set is.
Fantastic.
But it's interesting that you say that, because I think also with COVID happening, I mean, it was so interesting to see how it almost kind of created this divide in jobs, like jobs that you can do from home and jobs that you're going to lose in COVID because you can't do that in home. And that was completely unexpected.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things, like listening to radio shows about people starting new jobs, that could be done from home or could be done in COVID times, I realized that you don't get attached to a job, rather get attached to your skills and have that faith in yourself that your skills will carry you through no matter what the world and nature and viruses throw at you.
I do think, though, advertising, we are talking around it a lot, is that it does bring, though, some resilience, if that's the right word to use, and that the stream of advertising or marketing, you've also got to have a lot of resilience to be able to bat and have that discussion between client and brief, and have that internal turmoil in terms of what to do and how to communicate to individuals, during these tough times. How do you change strategy? How do you change that big idea? And that's what I certainly do love about it.
Yeah.
So the world is constantly changing. And things are not the same. Even 12 months ago, we didn't even know about the word COVID-19.
Sure.
But here we are.
Yes.
So, Graham, maybe you can give us an idea about how do you stay abreast of the constant changes that are happening so that your career is relevant to the market?
Well, at the office, I suppose, because I have a bit of a laugh always doing it, is I just tell people they have to read. And when I say watch videos, I don't mean Netflix.
I think students struggle
necessarily.
to understand that concept of reading. Many people haven't read for a long time.
I just have a massive love of reading, and I just feel today with the internet and what's available out there for you to just absorb constantly is unbelievable. So when I say read, always just be careful that what you're reading is as objective as possible. Try and do your homework behind it, and then just make sure that you do have a base from whence you're coming. So I just feel that you can get very lost in what you're reading, and suddenly you go off on a different angle. But if you if you're using that reading to create an iteration of something you're already interested in and adding to it, that's fantastic. We were talking about qualifications earlier on. And although I got a great base from my qualification, the only reason I am where I am today is due to reading and being curious and being critical actually in thinking. Sometimes it comes across differently, but because you ask tough questions, but I think it's just a case of if you're willing to read, you're willing to learn. And if you don't, Jamie said earlier on, if you stop learning in our industry, you might as well go home now. It's pointless. You have to continuously learn. We all talked about hinting at our age. I am 42. I read every day of my life and I learn every single day of my life. And if I haven't learned something on that day, I'm a little bit disappointed. And I'd say that's how you stay on it and that's how you stay.
Have you learned something today?
Oh, I can tell you what I read earlier. And I actually reread, funny enough, Les Bennett and Peter Field's Long and the Short of It. It's not light reading, but I'd suggest anybody who wants to do it, please do it, because I shared it around our agency. Yeah. So whenever I share something on our agency, just make sure I read it properly before I do, or you get yourself in trouble sometimes.
So Sue-Ann, your career in the digital space must be changing by the minute. Give us an idea, certainly to the students and their parents as well. Yeah. How do you stay abreast of what's happening in the digital space?
Yeah, I think I completely agree with you, Graham. I think it's so important to keep on learning and stay curious. That curiosity is what will help you go forward. But I also believe that it's a hybrid at this point. So we are living in an age where we have to be extremely agile. We should be able to adapt as fast as possible, and make sure that while you're curious, make sure that you take people on the journey with you, and you're not there by yourself in the front. So I think what we've seen is just using those digital elements and making it your own. One thing that we saw as an example last year is as soon as COVID hit, every single company decided to start having webinars. So everyone, by the end of last year, people were so webinar fatigued, no one wanted to go on a webinar, no matter who the speaker was. So we realized that people really enjoy bite-sized learnings. So instead of these massive long 2-hour webinars, rather going for a quick snippet and understanding what the subject matter is about, and then just using that opportunity.
So what I hear is constant learning, inform yourself, read, follow news if people are watching it.
And curiosity. I think we both said it. That's for me is if you're not curious, you're not going to learn. So you have to constantly question everything, and don't take anything for face value. Sounds a bit like anxious, but you definitely need that.
So Nick, when I spoke to my nephew the other day, he said, I asked, what career you want? He says, I want to be a gamer. I mean, I don't know what career is that, but give us an idea. You're in the gaming industry.
Yes, that's right. I mean,
of how one can build a career in that industry.
Look, I mean, having come from gaming myself, I mean, way back in the day, I mean, I don't know if you guys would remember an Atari or Nintendo set or whatever. Maybe that is showing my age. But I mean, I think within the gaming space, there's so many different career options. I mean, a lot of what individuals have chosen now is just in the esports gaming space, whereby they're good enough to be able to form part of an esports team that's playing the likes of Counter-Strike, etc. And I mean, there's money in it, where before there wasn't. Where you look at some of the top gamers, they're earning millions of dollars, actually. And then on the flip side of it, there's other individuals that have made a massive living around narrating the gaming space. So if you look at Twitch and you look at the way certain individuals are streaming that type of content or narrating the content, they're not necessarily good at playing the games themselves, but they've created a following of either being funny or creative, and they then are utilizing those skills to bring revenue to themselves. So that space has changed so much. And you were saying earlier, it's like that industry didn't exist, or what was this marketing space? And there's these new buckets of influence coming up to the surface all the time, and gaming just is one of those big areas where there's massive growth.
I think there's also a huge social element in it.
Yes, very much so.
I think it's called the metaverse or the metaverse, right? And it's just like creating this space where you can be somebody else. And I think that's obviously gaming is part of that. But I mean, some people, like for example, Fortnite, they've just enabled a mode where you can actually just go and hang out. Instead of actually really playing the game, you can just talk to friends and you can have your avatar and you can have a conversation. So I think the exponential growth of gaming and people seeing potential careers in gaming is absolutely massive as humans turn into this more sort of, I can have this life, I'm sitting here, but I can have my online life as well. And I think
But it's also created that like
before.
virtual competition, isn't it? I'm playing against you, and we can be anywhere in the world, and we were able to facilitate a competition or a leaderboard or a tournament and
For
such.
sure.
And
It's
I mean,
amazing.
humans kind of like flock to that. And it's like, oh, I beat you, and yeah, look how amazing I am.
Listen,
You know,
when
Yeah,
I was
so
younger, Pac-Man was the game,
Pac-Man was the game.
or Mario
Tetris.
Brothers,
Yeah,
you know.
Big Doug.
And that's when you were calling your friends in the arcade to come and look out when you did.
Getting the highest score. But Jamie, just as we come to a conclusion here, give me an idea of the difference between on the client side or the difference between on the agency side. So if somebody wants a career either as a client or an agency, what are the kind of things they need to think about?
I haven't worked on the client side myself, so whatever I say from that perspective will just be my opinion from being on the agency side. But what I will say that for people that have transitioned from the agency side to the client side, that typically works quite well. I think because when you come into agency life, at least initially, you kind of really are thrown in the deep end. It's a very steep learning curve. You kind of have to be a jack of all trades. You typically have to fulfill many roles, and it's a really accelerated learning path. So typically people that do want to end up on the client side, often it's kind of advantageous for them to start in agencies, get that experience, get to work on a number of different clients in loads of different categories because you get so many learnings that you can kind of pull through. And then, maybe 2 to 5 years into that, look for opportunities at different clients, because I think that the level of experience and the varied experience you're going to get in an agency is probably going to stand you in a far better stead than if you've just gone straight into one kind of category. I think that agencies are extremely fast-paced. They're extremely deadline-driven. People are known for burning out. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it does make for a really exciting, really challenging place to be. And I'm sure it's super exciting on the client side too.
Sure. Yeah, maybe I can speak about that on the client side. On the client side, you often have the money. So you think you control
Sign the checks.
what you're spending. And that gives you some sort of power. But it carries a lot of responsibility because on the client side, you're having to run things like profitability, matrices, sales, data, Excel spreadsheets. So for people who are more creative, it's not always the most fun place. So maybe there's a final question, and maybe Carmen can come in here. What are the careers that you could typically follow if you come to the Red and Yellow School?
Obviously, anything creative. We have a BA where you can specialize in art direction, illustration, digital design, big. We have several marketing courses. We have user-centered design courses that are accredited, and copywriting.
What is copywriting? Many people think, do I have to copy a photocopy or not?
No.
Ah.
It is coming up with amazing ideas for advertising. In fact, most agencies are run by brilliant copywriters, and often those ideas are translated in words. So actually, there's, a copywriter doesn't always have to come up with a slogan.
Yeah.
I mean, like Nike, just do it.
Yeah.
It's a famous line. Some copywriter wrote that line, I think.
Yeah.
I got my history right. But sometimes a copywriter will come up with an idea and there's no words to the idea, but it's a copywriter that came up with it, so there's a lot of strategy involved with it. Huge amount of jobs in the industry, guys, so if you have a love of the written word and come up with amazing creative ideas, we've got some bursaries for you.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you everybody for joining us today. It's really been awesome, and I think listening from people who have been in the industry for a while, I'm sure you'll get a lot of learnings about what potential are some of the careers you can follow. And also just go to the redandyellow.co.za and see what other courses there are available. Thank you everybody, and I appreciate the time.